long enough. So thank you very much, all of you, for showing interest in today's topic on documentary filmmaking. And right now we are having a guest speaker and trainer from Singapore, a very good friend of mine, Wesley Aroozoo. So let me just give you a brief background to who he is. He received his master's from New York University, Tisch Asia, and he's now currently doing his PhD at RMIT University. And Wesley is an educator, as he's an artist with 13 little pictures, and he's an award-winning artist from, spanning literature, film, television, and theatre. All right, he has 3 published novels, where his recent novel, The Punkawala and the Prostitute, was a nominee for the NUS Singapore History Prize and Epigram Books Fiction Prize. He was named the winner at the Singapore Book Prize, and the book is also a Straits Times weekly bestseller. Now, as a filmmaker, Wesley's films have screened in festivals such as the International Film Festival, Rotterdam, and Sapporo International Short Film Festival. And in 2017, his documentary, I Want to Go Home, which he also directed, had its world premiere at the Busan International Film Festival, where it was nominated for the Mercenate Award. He has also been awarded the Talents Tokyo Development Grants from Tokyo Filmex, and he has joined the ranks of prominent Southeast Asian filmmakers with a commissioned piece for the Asian Film Archives Fragments Anthology. Now, 3 years ago, he also made a documentary on a war relic that he found, and he returned the war relic to the rightful owner in Australia. And I think in this presentation, he will also talk about a recent documentary in 2024 where he found an abandoned maternity home in Singapore. And I'm incredibly honored to have Wesley with us today to share his insights on making the voice and the message of the documentary filmmaker more prominent today. Wesley, over to you, please.
Thank you so much, Edmund, for your very kind introduction. Hello, everyone. Great to meet you today. Really happy to be invited here today to share with you more about documentary filmmaking. Before I start, can I just check whether the slides are showing on screen?
No.
No, right? Okay. Let me do it again. I realized it disappeared after a while. Give me a second. Let me reshare it. Just give me a moment. All right. I think you'll be able to see the screen about...
Yes, it's loading up.
Okay, great. So at any point, if the screen does disappear, do let me know. I'll reload it. I'm not sure why it's disappearing. So anyway, welcome to today's talk, sharing session. So today I'll be sharing about voice and message as a documentary filmmaker, and I hope it's something useful for you. So I think in terms of documentary filmmaking, which is something you might be interested in, one of the questions we always ask ourselves are, who are you and what interests you? Because when it comes to finding your voice and message, understanding who you are or what interests you is vital. Because at the end of the day, it's about what do you want to say in your documentary? But this question seems so simple. Who are you? What interests you? It seems to be something that everybody kind of knows of themselves. But at the same time, it is also something that's very deep and difficult to wrangle with, as it's something that's very introspective. Requires a lot of confrontation as well, or a lot of understanding of the self. So sometimes, when you're doing a project, a documentary project, you're inspired by a profile, so like a person, or sometimes you're inspired by events, objects, places, culture. At the end of the day, wherever your inspiration comes from, it definitely comes from you, because you could have chosen anything in the world to talk about, but you chose to talk about a certain something. So that is something that emotionally resonated with you. And what we're trying to do is trying to figure out why is that so special to you, and how can we embrace that a little further to make our documentaries a lot more unique, because at the end of the day, every single person is unique. So documentary filmmaking is about opportunity to tell to figure out what message and voice is. Today I will share with you my experience, hopefully you too, on your own message and self. Hopefully it help you find your own documentary ideas or new documentary ideas, as I understand many of you have have documentary experience. And also maybe towards the end of the lecture, I'll be sharing with you a few more tips on how to approach your profiles perhaps a bit more with more confidence. So that's something I'll share with you a bit more. So the question is, who are you? What interests you? So for example, I thought I'll share a bit more about myself today. So for me, I am inspired and obsessed with loss and recovery. So in terms of loss and recovery, what I am intrigued in is I like to collect old things that are forgotten. So that's me. I like to look around in Singapore for old things that people are throwing away, but it does tell a lot about Singapore's history. For example, this is a Singapore payphone from the 1980s, something Edmund would be familiar with in Singapore. So we haven't seen this payphone for the last 20, 30 years in Singapore. So for me, when I have the chance to collect it, it's something I would keep, and then I'll try to refurbish it because this is something I enjoy doing as a hobby. Over there, next to the picture is a Rida Video Center. I think the slides disappeared, right?
Yeah, your slides disappeared, and I've got feedback that said your voice is a little soft.
Oh,
That's strange. I think it's got to do with our internet. Our internet is,
okay.
yeah.
Okay, I'll try to speak louder, and I have another. I think I'll know when the slides go away, so I'll keep logging in. I think we should be okay. So apologies to everyone. It might be a bit troubles, a bit odd that I'm logging in and off with the slides, but it's okay. Let's do our best. Next to it is a thing called Rida Video Center. That is a place in Singapore that is closing very soon. It's a place selling DVDs and PCBs, and so for me, I'm interested to collect their signage that's outside. Other than that, I think in Singapore, in terms of things that are forgotten, is very apparent here in Singapore because Singapore moves really fast. Old buildings get torn down and new ones are being built up. So the past is left behind very fast in Singapore. For me also, I emotionally resonate with others who are in stages of loss and recovery. So that's also about things being lost and things being built, perhaps, as it goes on. So let's look at the first thing. I like to collect old things that are forgotten. So in Singapore, we have this app on the phone called Carousel. And Carousel is a place where you can find old things. So in this app, I will search for vintage items Singapore or old items Singapore, and I will find different kind of stuff. Some of the things I found were like old medical instruments, and these were from Singapore in the 1960s, which I find intriguing. So this is my hobby, this is my interest, and these instruments belong to an old clinic in Singapore that's long gone. So these are interests. And I think when it comes to documentary filmmaking, we ask ourselves, is our interest enough? Is it enough to make a documentary? And perhaps not. Perhaps we need to take it a few steps up from there. So perhaps, it's not just about interest, it's also about telling us something that we don't know about. And that, I think, is the core of documentary filmmaking. And even for creative work in general, it's about doing something that hasn't been done and doing something a little bit different, telling us something new. So for documentary filmmaking as well, it's about telling us something that we don't know about. So sometimes these are questions we ask ourselves when we are making a documentary. Something else is maybe if it's something we know about, maybe then it's about giving us a new perspective on a certain subject or content from a different perspective or finding a different angle. So suddenly something where it's something common knowledge to everyone, but from a different perspective, it's seen differently. So documentary can do that too. Or maybe it's about something that moves me or to make me think. And this is to maybe you want to tell a story that has a lot of heart in it. And that's something that can move people or to inspire people or to encourage people. So that also perhaps is a good value to have in a documentary or good reason to even make a documentary. So let's just look at this. Tell me something that gives me a new perspective or from a different perspective. So Edmund shared with me some of your works, some of the participants today, and they were very amazing for me to watch because it was very well done work. So for example, there's one of the videos on Kabul Old City and by Abdul Ali Afghan. And for me, this documentary told me something about Kabul from a different perspective that I did not know about. So this is my point of view. I'm a Singaporean, and my idea of Kabul, of Afghanistan, might be very different from other people in different parts of the world. But in this documentary, it told me something very different. It gave me a new perspective of what Kabul is about and how beautiful Kabul is and how the city is going through restoration and revitalization of the different parts of the town and in the style and architecture of old Kabul, which I thought was just beautiful. So this is the reason for the docu to exist, because it's giving us new perspective. Sometimes it's even about telling me something I don't know about. And this docu was able to even give me insider access. So in the docu, they were also sharing about there's bird watching and how the locals would come on, I believe, on Fridays or another day of the week to watch birds, which I thought was very beautiful and only something a person living in the city would be able to know. So as an outsider, it's something I wouldn't know about. So that's also a good reason to have a documentary. So yeah, thank you for sharing your videos. I really enjoyed watching them. So it shows that, we need more than interest. Sometimes it really requires you to take your interest a few steps further. You need to research, talk to people, go out, explore. For example, the Kabul Old City video is about going out, exploring and finding the stories. So it demands a lot from you as a person to find what you want to say. So in documentary filmmaking, I feel you have to be curious, and you have to be brave to ask those questions and to go out of your house and talk to people, which can be quite scary for many people, especially for me. I think it's something that I'm still getting used to, even with some experience. So let me share with you an example of stepping out of your comfort zone and going out and asking questions to make a documentary. So let me share the slides again. 1 second. Okay, we're back. Sorry about that. So this is a place opposite where I work in Singapore. So it's a place where I teach, and opposite is a very old building, and it's been there for many years. I've been teaching in the school where I'm at for the last 13 years, and this place has been there. And I always wondered, what is this old building about? So old buildings in many parts of the world may be common, it's normal, but in Singapore it's quite uncommon because Singapore moves so fast. Old buildings get torn down and new skyscrapers are being built. So having this old building in Singapore is unusual and something I always wondered about. So for me, as you know, I'm also affected by the past that is left behind. So the past is this old building. So going back to it, I wanted to find out more about it. What I did was to go and ask permission, hi, can I have a look at what's in this building? What is it about? But even that took time to gain trust from the owners of the building to let me into the building. So maybe for you, when you're doing your documentaries, sometimes to get access to the content, it requires you to talk to the owners or people involved a couple of times for them to get to trust you and to let you into their private space. So it took me a few months. Eventually, they let me in, and I realized this building is an old abandoned maternity hospital in Singapore. What's interesting about it is that the place is frozen in time. So everything looks like how it was when it stopped being a hospital in the 1980s in Singapore. So inside is unusual as well. I also found out that there is a gynecologist who stayed there for 40 years after the place closed. So the place closed in 1980. She continued staying there from 1980 all the way to around 2020. That's when she passed away. So there was a lady who was a gynecologist, and she stayed there for 40 years in an abandoned hospital. To me, this is extremely interesting, right? It's unusual. This is the gynecologist. Her name is Dr. Yvonne Salmon, and she's an amazing lady who's been a gynecologist for many years, seeing to the birth of children since the 1960s. So when it comes back to this, is it enough to make a documentary? So if we look at it, perhaps tell me something I don't know about. I think yes. This is about an abandoned hospital frozen in time. It's something that many Singaporeans never knew existed. The other one, tell me something that gives me a new perspective. It also does fulfill it. It's about Singaporeans looking at this place and going hey, this place can exist in very fast-paced Singapore. We do have these old places that are lost in time, and they can exist and they can bring a lot of value. Tell me something that moves me and makes me think. This would be the gynecologist. Her name is Dr. Yvonne Salmon, and she lived there for 40 years. Not just living there in 40 years, primarily for a big bulk of that number of years, she was living by herself with some caretakers. And there's quite a bit of an emotional story involved with that as well. As the last few years of her life, she was suffering from dementia, and she didn't want to be in public's eye. So she stayed alone in an abandoned hospital. So for me, being curious, I was curious about the place. I wondered like, oh, what's going on in this place? Then I found a way to talk about hospital and finding about the amazing doctor. And that's how the documentary was made. So I would like to show you perhaps 2 minutes from the documentary just to give you an idea of this exploration. Tucked away in the middle of the city and unknown to most Singaporeans is the defunct Salmon Maternity Home. Founded in 1950, the hospital extends deep into the lane of Prinsep Street. Not usually accessible to the public, I'm grateful to be invited to explore the former hospital today and to share it with you. Entering the unlit building, I'm greeted with the stillness of a hospital stuck in time, since it ceased operations in the 1980s. The air is cool and silent, and the shadows add a touch of mystery. There's an old elevator that still works. I take it up to the second level, where wards line up a long corridor. An imposingly serious yet quirky door is labeled as the birthday room. Wow, everything looked just as it was after the last baby was born here in the 1980s. So, babies were typically delivered by midwives before the specialist antenatal and postnatal care was established as a norm in 1960s Singapore. Built in the 1950s, the Salmon Maternity Home was a pioneer in such specialized gynecological healthcare, and thousands of babies were delivered right in this. Okay, give me a second. Okay, we'll stop there on the video. So give me a second to just pull up the video again. Okay, so you saw a small sample of the documentary, and that is about exploring a space and something which means a lot to me because, as you know, things about the past in Singapore is something that I am interested in. But now we are bringing interest and bringing it into another level, interest to becoming a creative project, and that's a bit different. So, but what's the biggest difference is that how it went from interest to creative project is that you had to get out of your comfort zone and reach out for these stories. So sometimes we can't just rely on stories within arm's length. They require us to push ourselves and to ask questions, but of course not to do anything dangerous. So for example, in LaSalle, in Singapore, you know, when I look around my work area, there's a guy who owns like a really unusual motorbike that's like fire design. So for me, I wonder who rides this motorbike? So it can be as simple as asking questions like that. So it's about observing things or seeing what you're interested in and then taking a few steps from there. So other than looking out for stories, which is observing, asking questions, going out of your comfort zone, sometimes we also have to look on the inside and asking ourselves, who are we? You know, why do we do the things we do? So, for example, the stories you could tell, you know, they may not come from certainties. So it sometimes come from the inside, and sometimes the inside is about memory, doubt, and belonging colliding. And this is when you're not sure why you're interested in the things that you're interested. Why do you do the things you do in terms of your creative project? Because sometimes we don't know, and being an artist or being a filmmaker is about figuring it out. So every project you do, you kind of know a bit more about yourself. So for example, the video that Edmund shared with me by Basir Salehi, which is the polio documentary, which is so beautifully made, and it has such a strong message to share. So even for this video, I felt, you know, I could feel the heart of the filmmaker. The filmmaker really wanted to share and bring awareness to this issue in Afghanistan, and it has a lot of emotions and motivations, and this is probably the motivation of the filmmaker. So I don't know the filmmaker, but I do know, like, wow, there's a lot of heart and there's a lot of determination to share this story. So it depends. Sometimes something like this could have come from an article. So maybe, you know, from reading an article, you would then be like inspired to tell a story. So this is an article about vaccination in polio in Afghanistan. So I don't know the creative process of the filmmaker, but I wonder like, oh, it must have come from somewhere, right? So like wanting to tell a story about awareness about polio in Afghanistan must come from some motivation from the filmmaker. So sometimes for you, it's about trying to figure it out. You may be reading things or being interested in things, but may not know what you can do with it. But sometimes it's about knowing that, oh, you know what? If I do a documentary about what these things that interest me, they may be able to bring awareness and be able to bring change to people and to environments as well, because documentaries have such strong power to do that. But of course, sometimes these things take time because we're trying to understand why do we feel a certain way. So let me share with you another example. So even for me, I don't set out to go like, okay, tomorrow I shall do a documentary. Most of the things just come into my lifestyle or the way how my everyday life is. So for example, one day I was reading an article, and this article says, husband 57 years old takes up diving in bid to find wife's body 3 years after she went missing in the Japanese tsunami in 2011. So you all may remember in 2011, there was a tsunami that hit Japan and many lives were lost. So for me, reading this article, I felt it really took me by surprise, because there's this man who's 57 years old. He decides, I'm going to learn how to dive now because I want to find for my wife, even though she's been missing for 3 years in the waters. So for many people reading this article, their reaction could be, hey, this man is wasting his time. He will never find the wife's body because it's in the sea and it would be lost over time, right? So some people say, this man is crazy. Why is he doing this? Is he mentally stable? He's just wasting his time. So this is a general reaction. So even for you reading the article just in a second ago, you may have your own reaction to it. So for me as well, I had my own reaction to it. And I was also uncertain. When I read this, I knew I felt something in me, but I didn't know what to feel about it. What I did feel was, I knew that I wanted to talk to him. I knew that I wanted to find out more about him. So even as a person, not even as a filmmaker, these are things that I think about. And I ask myself, would I do the same for a loved one? Would I dive in the sea and search for them every week? So he dives in the sea every week, by the way. So for me, I want to him, and let me share the slides again. 1 second. Sorry that the slides keep going off. I'm not sure but before, but let's try again. It's just a small issue. Okay. So for me, I wanted to find him. So how do you find a guy who's in Japan? I am from Singapore, and how do I find a guy in Japan? So it took many months. Eventually, I found him, and I talked to him over emails for many months. And we talked over email asking about his life. Eventually, I had a chance to go to where he is. So he lives in Onagawa, Japan. And I had a chance to go and meet him. So before that, when we were talking about emails, he started sharing about his family. He started sharing about the day he lost his wife, what happened on that day. Perhaps I can share more about this later. He also shared more about his diving pursuits. So he'll share me, I dive every week. I don't really find anything about my wife, but sometimes I find small objects belonging to other people, and I can give it to them as well. So his diving also allows him to find things lost by other people in terms of like objects, a necklace belonging to someone. He'll find it and give it to the people, and it will mean a lot to them because it may have belonged to their loved ones whom they lost. He also shared with me the SMS text from his wife before he lost her, and the text said, I want to go home. And this is his wife telling him she wants to go home. And this when the tsunami was happening. So for me, I felt the reason why he wanted to do that was to bring his wife home as well. Eventually, he shared with me why he dives. So I asked him, Mr. Takamatsu, which is his name, why do you dive? So many people are saying that you may not find your wife, it's impossible, but why do you still dive? And he said he dives because it is the only way he can feel close to her. And for me, it made a lot of sense, because when it comes to love, I think it's such an unusual thing, and the things people do for love are truly out of this world sometimes, right? So love in itself is already quite unusual feeling. And so I felt, if he wanted to do that and it brought him happiness, sure, why not? He's not hurting anyone. So I thought it was very admirable. So it was only then, as a documentary filmmaker, I felt, you know what, I want to share this story. I felt his story can bring a lot of inspiration and encouragement to other people who have lost their loved ones. Maybe it would help them to understand grief and perhaps navigate it better. So as a documentary filmmaker, is to figuring out things that was from interest. So interest was me reading the article. Interest perhaps is also me reaching out to him. But now you see the progress from it becoming a creative project where I go, maybe I can do a project about this because it's something that is quite an unusual story and people don't know about much other than from the article. So sometimes it's about taking a first step, then you can figure out what a documentary can be. And the first step is really from reading the article and trying to find him. That was the first step, right? So I decided to take the steps and I wanted to meet him and I wanted to share his story in a documentary and a book. I thought it'd be a great creative adventure for me. But I also was scared because, I have to go all the way to Japan and it's in Onagawa, Japan. It's quite far away. It's quite near to where the nuclear reactor in Fukushima had a leak. So it's also a bit scary. But I think as documentary filmmakers, it's okay to feel scared. Sometimes you need to embrace it and go like, you know what, I want to do this because whatever work I'm doing can bring a lot of good to people. For example, with the polio documentary that Edmund shared with me that's done by you, that brought so much awareness to other people, and it made, I would think that it made a lot of change to others, and it all came from a documentary. So it's okay to be scared as a documentary filmmaker. Sometimes you have to push through it. So pushing through it, we visited him in Japan, Onagawa, Japan, and that's me and a few others. That's my student. I brought my student along and we met him in Japan. The lady there is the translator who helped me translate. So if you're not familiar with Onagawa and Fukushima, it's quite near to Fukushima. You remember the nuclear reactor leaking, which is why Fukushima is you can't go there, it's dangerous. Onagawa is nearby, did not have a leak, but some people may say there is, but that's a whole different story in itself. As you know, the tsunami was dangerous, over nearly 16,000 deaths, many injured, and many still missing until today. So when I had a chance to visit, much of the land looks very different. It's quite barren and flat. So because the tsunami kind of took away the space. So it was interesting to see and also sad to see because this what you're seeing on screen then. But 1 second. About that. Okay, what you are seeing on screen is flat land, but it used to be residential areas or houses and also a bank where Mr. Takamatsu's wife worked at. She worked exactly at where the location you're looking at. So for many people who were there during the tsunami, it was too late when the tsunami came and it was above the residential buildings, which were 3 to 4 stories high. These are workers working on the land to kind of build new houses. I had a chance to visit Mr. Takamatsu in his home. We filmed his everyday life for a week. Eventually, we had a chance to talk to him and interview him and also follow him on his diving, which was interesting to see him go dive and to see what he does. So sometimes finding the message for a documentary requires the right steps. As a documentary director, sometimes you also need to do some pre-work before approaching your profile. So for me, before going to Japan, I have to do a bit of research or pre-work to know like, okay, when I do go to Japan, as a documentary, it can be, there's an amount of flexibility, which is not knowing what will happen. But at the same time, that doesn't mean you don't prepare because you do have to prepare and also be open to changes. So one of the first things you need to do for documentary filmmaking, even though you know what's your voice and message, is to do your research. So research is important to ask the right questions during interviews to understand the bigger picture of what's going on. So for example, for mine, I had to research into the profile. So that is Mr. Takamatsu. I had to read up more about him, understand him a lot more. And this is from my emails with him for almost a year. So that's my research into him. Research into the event, that is the tsunami. So I need to research about what happened during the tsunami, which part of Japan did it hit, what were the recovery efforts from there. So that when I ask Mr. Takamatsu questions, they are a lot more informed and a lot more knowledgeable. You also can research into stories of the area. There were a lot of ghost stories in Onagawa, and these were related to the people who were lost during that time. And even those stories are important because it's part of the like culture or like stories of the area at that point in time, and what were people feeling as well. Research into facts as well, that's also important, into the earthquake, in the tsunami as well. So for example, for researching into facts, I interviewed a geology expert to ask him about, about the tsunami and what were his thoughts. And interesting enough, this is a man called Mr. Masunobu Shishikura. And Masunobu Shishikura is an interesting man because he, in a way, predicted that the tsunami would hit Japan in March 2011. He was even going to speak to the government to tell them, hey, a tsunami will hit Japan very soon. We need to evacuate people. Unfortunately, his meeting with the government was on March 23rd, 2011, but the tsunami hit March 11th, so his meeting was too late. So sometimes I wonder if he did have a chance to speak to the government, maybe many lives could have been saved. I also interviewed a radiation expert because Onagawa was near to Japan, near to Fukushima, where there is radiation, which is interesting. So I think this is something to think about back in 2011, 2015. So radiation, I think, is interesting because there's a lot of controversy with people saying, oh, Onagawa has radiation, the nuclear leaks are real. But I brought my own radiation meter and I measured the radiation in Singapore, Tokyo, and Onagawa, where the nuclear reactor is. And I found out for myself which place has the highest radiation. And the answer is Singapore. So it's not Onagawa. In fact, Onagawa had the lowest radiation. So it's not true. Sometimes we read the fake news that's running apparent a lot today on our social media. So we really need to reread or find out the truth behind things. And that's your job too as a filmmaker, as a documentary filmmaker, to bring truth to this fake news. How to approach your interview. So let me go through some tips perhaps might be useful for you in terms of documentary filmmaking. Sometimes it requires sensitivity because, for example, Mr. Takamatsu is a very private person. So I need to make sure the questions I ask are responsible and also not too, not something that would scare him away. So it's something that will slowly make him feel comfortable to answer. So sometimes that requires a safe space, a comfortable space to do your interviews. So if you're doing interviews for your documentaries and if you're talking about sensitive subjects, you usually want to get your interviewee into a place that is comfortable for them. Usually it's their home, a place that they're comfortable with, because if you bring them to a space which is foreign to them, you will make them a lot more uncomfortable to speak about something so sensitive in a strange environment. You also have to structure your interview questions to know how to ask your questions, from the easier questions and then leading up to the harder questions, which I'll share more a bit later. And of course, quick thinking, because filmmaking is, one second, share the screen again. So here we go. Just a second, no issue. Quick thinking also is required for documentary filmmakers, because when your interviewees respond something, you must be able to respond to that answer, and that can lead to a whole different conversation as well. So sometimes it's about not just preparing questions, but being open to asking different questions as well. So, as I mentioned, for Mr. Takamatsu, when I asked him the most sensitive questions, for example, about the tsunami, about his wife, I did the interviews in his home where he felt very comfortable. So maybe that's something you can do. Other ways to make your interviewees comfortable, communicate without the camera recording. So you can bring the camera in, but don't record yet. Just have a conversation with the person. And then later you can switch it on. Because if you switch on the camera and ask them a question, they might feel like they're on the spot, or they feel anxiety. So you don't want to do that, because you want them to respond in the most natural way. Sometimes you can also share about your past works. So you can show them, hi, this is the other documentaries I've done. You are in good hands. I'm going to treat this documentary well. I'm going to treat your responses well. Everything's for a good cause. So that helps as well. You also can share about yourself. So documentary filmmaking is not just about a one-way conversation. It's about two ways. When the person shares about something sad, you can share about something sad as well as a documentary filmmaker sharing, you know what, I felt that way too. So you make the interviewee feel like they are in a conversation rather than they are being interviewed, which is two different things, right? So being interviewed and being in a conversation is not the same thing. Your job as a documentary filmmaker is to make an interview feel like a conversation. Sometimes you also need to indirectly help ask them to share deep thoughts. So how do you ask someone to share very emotional things without asking the actual question? How do you do that? So it's about doing it indirectly. There are subtle ways. You can use objects. So you can ask them, do you have old photographs? And then you can bring out the photographs and then you can ask them, can you tell me more about this photograph? And they'll be able to share more about it. So it gives them something to hold, it gives them something to look at, it gives them a platform to talk about something, and suddenly they don't feel so alone. They feel like they have something to talk about. And so it's a bit indirect, right? So you can do that. You can look at what they have in their homes, objects, and ask them more about it. And sometimes you'll be very surprised by the kind of stories they could share. Sometimes you can also use picture association. This one is a bit more experimental. You can show them a picture and ask them, how do you feel about this? So this is a picture of an ocean, and I will ask Mr. Takamatsu, how do you feel about the ocean? As you know, Mr. Takamatsu is someone who lost someone during a tsunami. So I would feel that water, the sea, the ocean would have a much different meaning to him than to me, a Singaporean who does not have much stories related to the sea. So when you ask him something like this, he might share a lot more about it. And suddenly he's talking about his emotions. So sometimes you might even ask them what if questions. So what if questions is like asking them, what if this happened? How would you feel? And this is also indirectly asking them a way to respond to how they feel. So let me show you an example. This is an interview with Mr. Takamatsu, the man in Japan. And I asked him a what if question, and this is a way for him to talk about his wife in a more comfortable way. So let me show you the video.
メッセージを伝えることができるならば。
そうですね。まあ家族みんな、一応ね、とりあえず元気でやってるからということと、どこにいるのか聞きたいですね。
Okay, so the question asks him, Mr. Takamatsu, if you can pass a message to your wife, what would it be? And he shared his response to that. And I said, I asked her, where is she? So it tells me a lot about how he's thinking about things without asking him how he's thinking. So it's indirect way of doing this. So hopefully this can be useful for your documentary filmmaking, especially if you're asking slightly more sensitive questions. Sometimes I also ask them about their dreams. So I asked Mr. Takamatsu, do you have any dreams? And he did share, he does have a reoccurring dreams about his wife, which I found very sad, and this tells me so much about how he thinks about his wife all the time, without telling me that he thinks about his wife all the time. So this is an indirect way of sharing that. And so sometimes you can ask your interviewees about their dreams, I think. So it's not dreams and goals, but more like dreams when they go and sleep, that kind of dreams. So things that are in their psyche or in their mind. Sometimes as a documentary filmmaker, you also have the flow of, one second. Apologies for the tech issue. Okay, the screen is back. So sometimes you have to guide the flow of the interview questions, because you want to make sure that the interviewee is as comfortable as possible. That's your job as a documentary director, to make sure your interview is comfortable, not put on the spot, not made feel uncomfortable, and not feel like they have to say something they don't want to say. So this requires a lot of respect and care for your interviewee. So you can look at your questions you're asking them almost like a curve. You may start off with a bit of easier questions, and then you may go up to the slightly more emotional or harder questions to talk about. So for example, these are different questions I can ask Mr. Takamatsu. Question 1, how old were you when you were chased by a dog? Next one, when did you start to work at the airbase? Then the next one, how did you and your wife meet? The next one, can you share how you felt the moment you realized your wife was swept away by the tsunami? Next one, has the weather in Onagawa always been this sunny? And the last one, what is your favorite food? So to start off a conversation with an interviewee, you want to start with the easier questions like, what's your favorite food? Or can you tell me how's the weather? How's your day? Tell me more about your day yesterday. What did you do? So this is just getting the interviewee comfortable. And then as you go along, then you might ask the slightly more sensitive questions. This is when they're a lot more comfortable. They're comfortable with the camera being there. They almost feel like the camera is not even there anymore because they forgot about it. And now they can share the slightly more, the tougher questions. Unfortunately, as a documentary filmmaker, sometimes it is about asking those tough questions because that is the area where a lot of encouragement and inspiration can be used to share with others too. So it requires some amount of navigation in how you ask questions. So this is Mr. Takamatsu sharing his deeper thoughts. You can tell he's at home and he's sharing a lot more. He's sharing a more deeper feeling. So let's watch this clip.
まあ余裕、それぐらい自分の気持ちの中で余裕ができてきたのかどうかわかんないんですけども、まあこの海の中のねどっかにいるんだろうなと思うとなんか、いつもこう買い物とかで別れになると向こうの方から見つけてくれたんで俺の方をねなので、まあ、海でもそうなんないかなとは思ってるんですけど、まあなかなかねなかなかそううまくはいかないもんで。
Yeah, so that's him sharing a very touching thought from him. So this is something he will share towards the end of the interview. So as a documentary filmmaker, you're finished doing your interviews, you're finished doing your B-rolls, shooting the different locations, etc. You're gathering all your footages, and now it's your job to present the story in the best way possible, to do justice to your interviewees and to make sure you have the best video. So for this video, we were lucky. We were showing a few festivals. We got a chance to present this story to many people and hopefully inspire others by Mr. Takamatsu's very inspiring story. And that was the goal for me as a filmmaker, to share his story. So perhaps you might have similar goals when you're doing your documentaries. You want to have a goal of sharing someone's inspiring story, or perhaps sharing about something that people don't know about, something about Afghanistan or Kabul that's intriguing or different, that goes beyond expectations. So yeah, we still have a bit of time. So let me show you the trailer for the documentary, and then we will continue towards the last end of the sharing session. So this is the trailer for the docu.
もし奥様にメッセージを伝えることができるならば。
そうですね。まあ家族みんな、まあ、一応ねとりあえず元気でやってるからということと、どこにいるのか聞きたいですね。
Sorry, give me a second. I know the screen went off. Let me put it back on. Give me a second. Okay, so that's just the trailer. Sure. So for me as a documentary filmmaker, it's about I'm really happy to be able to reach out to others to share his story, and I hope this is an opportunity you can have too, where your docu project could touch lives or educate people or bring new perspectives. So I think it's always good to remember that documentaries can do a lot, just as with fiction films too. But documentaries do have that little bit of upper hand because it's a bit more real. So for you, you need to put on your documentary director cap and dig deep behind the content. 1 second. Almost there. Yeah, so it requires you to really dig deep to find that content. And sometimes it comes from asking these questions. Who are you? What interests you? And what is your message? Why do you even want to do a documentary? What do you hope to achieve by it? Yeah, so it comes back to you a lot. And each of you is unique. Each of you has your own voice and of what you want to do. So I think it's about embracing that part of you and introspecting, which is looking at yourself and asking, why are you doing the things you do? So, for your works, I'm really excited. I read the proposal from Abdul Ali Afghan's Mazar travel documentary. So reading it also, I was like, wow, this is so interesting. I did not know there was this part in Afghanistan, when you're sharing a bit more of I think it's called the Shrine of Roza-e-Sharif, which I thought was so beautiful, extremely beautiful. So it's things like that, where you have the heart in it, and you're going like, I want to share this because not many people may know about it, and even if they do, my documentary will bring a new perspective to this. And I think this is something which the Mazar travel documentary would do, and we're looking forward to it. If it's ever made, do share with me. I would love to watch it. So yeah, so thank you so much for having me. Hope today's share of ideas. But I think the most important thing is to realize that your documentary can count and will count. And I'm sure you're gonna go on to do many amazing works. Just something that sometimes we just have to move backwards a bit and kind of understand who we are and why do we want to do the things we do. If you want to keep connected also, this is my IG, my Instagram, and my website. If not, we could use the last part if you have any questions. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Wesley. Very insightful journey of a documentary filmmaker. So I think we'll let the people who are real filmmakers here ask you questions. I don't want to take up too much time. So we'll just, if you want to ask a question, just unmute yourself and you can ask a question, okay?
So, first of all, Wesley, thank you so much for your help in the informational full messages. And I got a lot of things that you told me. When I started the documentary filmmaking, just my struggle was all of foreign forces want to their political issues to run there, and they just show the very bad face of Afghanistan, very like scary face of Afghanistan. That's why I decided to start filmmaking like positive Afghanistan. And now I'm struggling to show the positive pace of Afghanistan. But something that now I am thinking about that the more videos viral in people saw Afghanistan, but this is like repeatedly every day people making a movie in there is no new thing. Now I'm trying to find something very new for tourism, for more positive thinking about Afghanistan. So what's your idea about that?
Thank you so much for your question. So are you the filmmaker for
What
Capital
happened?
City? Okay, great. I thank you for sharing your video.
Thank you.
It was very amazing. So I think your question is about you hope to do more videos about showing Afghanistan, the beauty of Afghanistan, and also to hopefully get more visitors to see how beautiful the land is. So uh, I felt your video Kabul Old City managed to did that for me, because when I watched it I was like, oh my gosh, I did not know this. I did not know this beauty was in Afghanistan. I think the world's view of places in the world might be how they receive it, which is through news, or things that they hear. So your video really brought a new perspective to how I saw Afghanistan, and I thought it was very intimate, very special, very personal as well. So I hope you will do more videos to show that beauty of Afghanistan. If it's not just about culture, perhaps there's something else as well that you might want to explore to show the world that, hey, what you think of Afghanistan is different. So yeah. But so was there a question as well, or did I manage to answer it?
I think you answered it.
Okay. Sorry. Thank you so much.
You asked me something. Sorry, the voice is little different.
Just
difficult.
sharing. I really look forward to more of your works, and if you do more videos in the future about Afghanistan, I would love to watch it.
Sorry. So I think when I start the movie of Old Kabul, that was very difficult for me to how start from where I start and where I finish. But today, when I listening you, I learn a lot of things that how to start the documentary and how to finish the documentary. Now I'm in Mazar right now. I came for some urgent work, and I will start from some new way the documentary. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you so
But
much.
sorry for my English. My English is not very good. That's why I'm recording all of your videos. Then I will listen again and again.
No problem, no problem. All good. Thank you.
Do we have any more questions from anyone else? What are some of the challenges that you face while making documentaries in Afghanistan? Do you have to get approval from the ministries? Do you need to get approval from the provincial office or the police department, etc.? And then how do you go around solving those problems? Because I know taking a camera out in the streets is not allowed today. Are the filmmakers able to ask any or tell us some of the problems you are struggling with? Challenges. What are your challenges?
Yes. So can I answer? Of course, there is a lot of problems, but when you told me the first of the class that go out from your comfort zone and ask some people, and that was very interesting because yeah, here's a lot of problem. One is the problem that if I have a letter of a government to go somewhere, also the security guys ask me why you are coming here and they stop my work. But some another issue there is, but we have to struggle that. This is not easy, but we have to struggle. Like Mr. Wesley told me that you have to struggle, you have to go to from comfort zone. So this is not easy way to work in Afghanistan, but this is the meaning of a good documentary maker to go and struggle.
Abdul-Jan, can you speak in Dari for the other filmmakers who may want to understand what you just said? Because I think it's a very important thing you just said about comfort zone and how to get into how to move into that space. Because there are some other filmmakers, I think they're struggling with English. So maybe you can say that in Dari? Your answer in Dari. Yeah, I'm talking to you, Abdul-Jan.
اوکی. سلام دوستای عزیز، بخوام اگر دوستان نفهمیده باشه که ما داری کمک صحبت کنیم. مستر ویسلی بسیار به چیزای مفید اشاره کرده که یک از چیزایی است اگر شما میخواین که یک انسان‌ساز بسیار ورزیده تر و خوبتر و مسلکی تر باشی، باید از کمفرت زون خود بیرون براین و کوشش کنین، مبارزه کنین تا که یک چیزی به دست بیارین. این یک بسیار موضوع مهم بود که باید ما شما سرازی کار کنیم. یک دو اگزامپل، یک دو نمونه را برای ما شما نشان داده. یک از تاکاماتسو بود که زنش در پی از دست داده بود از آب سونامی ژاپن، و یک موضوع یک تعمیر کنای سنگاپور بود که در اونجا یک زن بود و کتسنوشتکا بود و یک کسای بسیار جالب بود. میگم ما چند دفعه کوشش کردیم که اینا با ماها برایشان مسیج ماندیم، ایمیل کردیم تا که اونا آماده شوه و ما یک مستند خوب به دست بیاریم. از همین خاطر میگه کوشش یک چیزی است که ما شما میتونیم به یک هدف خوب برسیم. و دیگه سوالات که شما دیدی که who we are and what we are doing و این چیزایش که شما بخیال فهمیدی یه است که شما برای خاطر به خاطر چی کار میکنیم، چرا کار میکنیم، ما کی هستیم و چرا میخوایم که برای مردم نشان بدیم. عدد ما چی است از این مستند؟ مثل که یک عدد ما است که وقت 2010 آمد دبی بودم و آمدم در افغانستان، یک موضوع سیاسی بود، خارجی ها میخواست که افغانستان قسم بدرنگ نشان بده. متاسفانه که یگان تلویزیون های افغانستان هم یا به نفهمی یا به هر حالت که بود این کار پیش می بود. باز ما وعده کردیم که ما یک تصویر مثبت افغانستان باید نشان بدیم تا که به مردم یک کم پیدا خبر رسه، یک کم که تجارت موازی از روانی مردم آسوده باشه. از این خاطر ما به نام او وقت منم پوزیتیو افغانستان یک پیجم جور کرده بودیم، ما شاید زیاد دوست خبر داشته باشه و فعلا ما کوشش میکنیم که یک تصویر مثبت افغانستان به دنیا نشان بدیم، نه که همیشه ما خواری و بدبختی ها را نشان بدیم و مردمی که در اینجا تاجر است اون مایه شوه بگرز از مادن ما و شما و خود ما و شما روز به روز دیگه هم شکنجه شدیم و بدبخت شدیم. عدد ما و عدد خود مستر ویسلی ای بود که شما همیشه کوشش کنین که یک پیام خوب به مردم خوب برسانین و یک داستان خوب که پیدا به مردم برسه، نه که فقط یک مستند باشه، یک داستان باشه. ادبی است که یک پیدا باشه. فعلا هیچ کس غمخوار ما شما نیست، نه ملل متحد است، نه امریکا است، نه دیگه کشور است. فقط ما شما هستیم که ماندیم در اینجا دنیا، ما شما را ماند و ما شما میتونیم که یک کوشش مثبت بکنیم. این یک پیام مستر ویسلی بود و امید است که ببخشید انگلیسی ما که خوب نبود و کمک که ما در کردیم این موضوع بود. تشکر. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Any more questions from anyone? So if not, I think we will end this session because we have already covered 1 hour. So at this point, I would like to thank again Wesley for your time, your commitment, and your enthusiasm for sharing your insights, your creativity into documentary filmmaking. And I really want to thank, on behalf of KITE, as well as the filmmakers here who are present here, again for your expertise and again your willingness to share with us all your beautiful work, your creative work, and we just hope that you can continue to guide us along for the rest of the filmmakers. There aren't many now these days, but I think we should be able to hopefully find a way to rebuild the creative industry. Yeah. So thank you again, Wesley, and all the best.
Okay, thank you so much, Edmund, and wishing everyone a blessed and safe month of Ramadan. And I look forward to your future works. If you want to share me your future works in the next time, reach out to me anytime. I'll be super happy to watch it. And yeah, thank you so much for today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so
everyone.
much, Mr. Wesley. I'm really happy to meet you. Thank you so much.
Tashakkur.
Thank you.
Khudafez.
Bye.